So most of you will notice that I am up there as well. We're recording this tonight, so Zoom is on. So for nothing else, if you may see me during our, especially during our discussion later, I may stand here a little bit more than I'd like to, because if I'm down there, they won't be able to hear. So we're going to start with this though. You need lunch. Everybody have one? Except for. There you go. All right. Since we are talking about motivation and educational psychology, the reason behind why students do what they do, the reasons behind how they learn, what's the best way to get somebody to learn, we're going to start with a small activity that a lot of our students go through on a daily basis. You all have an envelope. You have some sort of an idea if there's something in there, those of you with flashlights and a creative mind, right? This envelope is going to represent homework. And you are all students in a class, and this is the homework that you were assigned yesterday by me, your teacher. And this is what you brought to class today. Oh. So can we open it? No. No. As evidenced by what a lot of you are already doing, some of you are just like your students would be in the classroom wondering whether or not their homework is done. Is it done correctly? Is it done? Yay. Or did you just not do it? This is going to be a visual representation of a study that was actually done by an insurance company. And the insurance company wanted to study the validity of homework. Because what they were finding is that our teenage drivers' insurance rates were going up even higher than they used to, because some of our students were doing homework upwards of 5 or 6 hours after school. Now, keep in mind, those of you who were in small schools or in big schools, you had activities after school. Sometimes you wouldn't get home until 6 o'clock, 7 o'clock, and then you had 4 or 5 hours of homework. Sound familiar? Some of you? MetLife wanted to do a study on the validity of homework. Most of you are that type of a student who are going to care one way or the other. It's done. It's good enough. I didn't get time. I didn't care. I had to do this instead. Or you're the one who might have stayed up until all hours of the night making sure it's absolutely perfect. All three of those are going to be represented here. So you're either going to have an empty envelope, in which case you didn't do your homework. You're going to have something that looks familiar to you and you can make sense of it, but you're not really sure if what you're making sense of is what it actually is. Or you're going to have something that you make sense of, it looks like it's right, and you've done it correctly. So, go ahead and open up your envelope. Christmas morning.
I think Jesus.
So, I want you all, first of all, look around visually, because even though we're missing a few, of course, I've got some envelopes up here. This is pretty much what it looks like on any given day in the school with homework. You're going to have those students who did nothing. The natural assumption for teachers often is that they just didn't do it. Lazy, too busy, my class didn't matter because you were doing something else. We oftentimes might call you out and we might say something like, how come you didn't do your work? What were you doing? How come you didn't do it? And if it's for a reason that they don't really want to share in class, they might get a little defensive. They might get a little defiant. They might even swear at me or kick a can or not even want to do it from there. These guys up here kind of got it. Not really sure. They've done something. And I can take something from what they've done, but they're still not our rock stars, are they? Sorry. You guys, yay! You got your homework done. In the grade book goes an A. In our teachers' perceptive minds, they did what they were supposed to do. They are obedient. They are the good academic students. When in reality, how many of them were 2 simple letters away from being over here? And how many of you guys were really close to being over there? If nothing else, because of maybe your own fear. I'm not going to do this right. I didn't get it. I listened. I took all the notes. But it's still not there. Now I want you to look at these 3 tiers, because they're in every single classroom. Those kids who play school well, they did it. Mom and dad might have even done it for you. These guys might have had a mom and dad who had to go work 3rd shift, and so they were responsible for taking care of their siblings, putting them to bed. And that was after they took care of themselves. They might still have chores to do, might have to go out and feed the cows, might have to do a ton of other things, so that when they sit down at midnight to finally do that homework, they just don't care. Do we blame them? No. Some of them might be lazy. Some of them might just simply be, Joe, Fortnite. Right there. I just started. Some of you might even recognize yourself in that group as, I've got so much to do, I don't know where to start, so I'm not going to. These guys over here probably have struggled the most because they're there, they just can't connect it. And they're trying. These guys might even have that parent at home who's the helicopter parent, who's going to be after them, try harder, get this done. But then we'll back off and let them maybe put down something that isn't supposed to be there. These are your future students. And every single way that you handle these circumstances determines how they're going to motivate themselves to learn. Oftentimes, they got their work done, they get extra points, or they get a benefit, or they get a dojo point, or you guys can go to the library and do whatever you want to while I work with these guys. Oftentimes, I'm going to spend the most amount of time with those guys because they didn't do it. You guys will then go by the wayside. Now, where's your motivation? You're the student. Where's your motivation? Do you guys even care after I yell at you? Are you going to do the next thing because you didn't do it this time? You guys are stranded. Not really getting the help you need. Probably going to end up there. And you guys, how many of you guessed and just got it right today? Or you work together in the hallway right before class. Those are the circumstances of your students in your classes. I have no idea why you didn't do it. I can call you out. I can embarrass you. I can send you to the detention room. I can put you in ISS. I can send a note home to mom and dad. But I have no idea why you didn't do it. I still don't know why these guys didn't quite get it because I taught it perfectly. You had the notes, right? You need to work a little harder like those guys. Now I want you to think about this. You guys probably are the most motivated after that because you got a little really good feedback. You got it today. Woo-hoo, I'm feeling good. I get to go home, mom, dad, yay. I've now lost all of these guys. And I want you to think about that while we talk about this tonight. Because if you're willing to lose this many of your students, dropout period is done, but you might be able to still get some of your money back, right? All right, real quick, just in your small little groups, talk about that just for a minute. How do you feel? Where you're at? How do you feel? What's your test?
They are chatting with each other. So we really want to suck.
All right, you go ahead and go back and sit down. Just another opportunity. How come?
I feel like I could better. I don't like not. I'm just feeling unprepared.
Who else? Who else would be willing?
I think it's kind of embarrassing when you fill up somewhere and you're not prepared. So,
Keep in mind both of their answers were things that affected them socio-emotionally. They both took that as something very personal. It embarrassed me. I was unprepared. I felt bad because of so. Now, those of you who had your homework done, how many of you would be willing to trade? How come?
Right, because you got to make you don't got means.
Oh, did you cheat?
Yeah. I got it for me.
Did you? Would you ask a student if you had actually cheated and got kudos for it, would you keep your mouth quiet?
I mean, I don't know. Probably not because you get cheated out, but.
It's a true statement, is it not? I mean, don't raise your hand because, I don't want to have to turn anybody in, but who has not cheated in college? And I asked that in a very leading way, right? Because I could ask it the other way, who has cheated, right? Who hasn't cheated? I can ask that a ton of different ways. We make the assumption of that. So, and I was just having this conversation with our 453ers just an hour ago. They were talking about homework, and they were talking about the amount of homework that their students out in the classroom now are getting from their field teachers. And some of you who are noticing that already out in the field are noticing the amount of homework that is being sent home. And I asked him the question, so what are you assessing the student over, trivia or knowledge? Are you assessing your student over what they know? I mean, can they go down to Wooden Legs on Wednesday night and win that trivia contest because they took a test over that? Or can they tell you why the Revolutionary War happening has such an effect on our economics today? And that's where you as teachers are going to need to start thinking about this, right? Because you're going to have those kids that cheat. I had both my sons. One of them got hauled in by the principal, smacked on my desk in the school. You take care of him. He was cheating with his now current girlfriend, right? And that's literally, they were out in the hallway getting their work done because they needed to please the teacher. They needed to please the teacher. They needed to get it done so they could get a good grade to please mom and dad. They could have cared less if they knew what was on the material that they were cheating, right? And that's why what we're going to talk about today is that intrinsic versus extrinsic motivation. Some of you are going to find that your students are being paid for their grades. If you come home with A's on your report card, you get this much money. Back in my day, they might have gotten $1 for an A. Today, I heard upwards of hundreds. I know you're all wondering, how do I get in that family? If you keep your grades up when you're 16, I'll buy you the car. And I want you to think about the cognitive processes that are going on there. And I want you to think about some of those things that educators throughout the years have always said. If you get good grades in high school, you can go to college. If you get good grades in college, you're going to get a good job. I know a lot of art history majors that aren't working. Good grades in high school, good grades in college didn't necessarily translate. What's the motivation for your students to learn? What is it that you want your students to walk away from your class knowing about knowing? Do you want them to learn the trivia or do you want them to understand the material? You guys all chose your content areas, I've told you this before, because you have a passion for it. You're not just trivia whizzes. You get it, you understand it, you love it. You can't wait to share that with somebody else. Yet when we are teachers in the classroom, oftentimes we take that extrinsic motivation of getting a good grade or getting into the next class or going to college or getting a good grade on the ACT as the motivation for that student to know what it is that you're talking about. And that's not the way our brains work. Extrinsic motivators are short-lived, as evidenced by every Google diet known to man. If you've ever seen anybody diet from the latest diet fad 6 months down the road after they've lost all the weight, guess what? They gained it all back because it was an extrinsic motivator. Our brains don't work that way. Okay? So, let's talk about this a little bit. This literally sums it all up. It's a way of view learning. That's all that it is. Cognitive views of learning. And I want you to notice a few words up there. Active mental processes. Active. It doesn't mean you're sitting and getting. It means you are doing and thinking. You are actively involved in what is going on. You are actively processing. You are not just simply being told. You're physically involved. Your brain is working. Your brain is all there. Your brain is doing the work there. Your body oftentimes is doing the work as well. I'm going to show this video. I did send this one, right? I think. So, this is from Dead Poets Society. Best teaching movie ever, in my honest opinion. Not a whole lot of talent teaching in there, right? But Robin Williams here plays a teacher, if you've never seen this movie, plays a teacher who, in the course of first entering his classroom, looks at a bunch of students. And those students, I want you to notice. And I want you then to notice what he does.
Or maybe not. Curmudgeon. All right. Oh. Oh, that'll blow you away. All right. This may be an issue because we're Zooming. Ah, okay. Nah, it's not going to like me. All right, so we're going to scrap that for a second. I will bring it to you. If not, I'll show it to you. So what he does in a heartbeat is when he walks into the classroom, he literally is looking at a bunch of students who have their textbook in their hands, who have their desks in a nice straight row, who are absolutely waiting for someone to tell them what to know. And instead of following through with what every instructor they've ever had in their life, he takes them out into the hallway and he has them just have a conversation with him. He gets them up, he gets them moving, he gets them thinking outside of that traditional way. Now that's not to say that every single class should always be out in the hallway doing this. But what he does is he's got to get them thinking actively rather than sitting there staring at a textbook being told what to know. At the end of all of that, he basically tells them it doesn't matter what you know, you're all going to die. Pretty harsh. He's an English teacher. They're doing poetry. Everybody dies in English poetry. He gets them thinking outside the bounds of normalcy. He gets them thinking about things that they weren't thinking about before. You guys all walk into classes. You all walk into schools. When was this? I want you right now with each other, with somebody who's right next door to you. What is one thing you've seen in a school that shocked you? Shocked you. Made you go, Not shocked as in like a kid's running naked down the hallway, although that could be it, right? Something that shocked you, something you saw in a school that surprised you. Your turn.
So what shocked me the most when we did observation last semester was whatever semester it was, anyways. I went to Lake Preston High School, and coming from like a semi-small school where I graduated with 62 students, going to that school was even smaller, and so the class size was what like shocked me the most. Where her welding class only had 2 students.
What you notice about the students in that welding class?
They weren't like
What were they doing? 2?
themselves. Like they weren't like like the 2 students are like talking to each other. Like I don't know, like every once in a while they would go up and stuff, but
They might tell them to shut up. Well, something that shocked you.
Me and Randy both had like K-12 in one building, so we've never seen that before. We did our application.
What's the benefit of that?
All centrally located.
Centrally located, so geography's good. What What else? Yeah. Anybody in here grew up in a K through 12 school? Anybody notice the benefit of a K through 12 school? Same building?
Sometimes we go down like interact with young kids, like read I think it's 6 to 8 weeks, go down and read.
Not very traditional though, is it? I mean, you're not going to see that in Sioux Falls, Lincoln. Nothing against Sioux Falls, Lincoln. It's just that it's too big. It can't be done, right? To learn anything from that?
I don't know, it's fun.
Did you get to watch? Do you remember being little and watching the older kids?
Yeah.
Very much so. What else? What else has shocked you? Go ahead.
I would say the level of security in some schools was kind of shocking. And like I went to like my home school this past week, and there was like no security at all. Like nothing. Like I just know there was like walking in front doors. So that was kind of shocking.
How many of you are noticing that as you go out, the level of security? Kind of frightening, actually. Yes, ma'am.
Depending on where you are in the country, I've gone to schools where there are like 1,000 kids in the class, and my graduating class is only 6. But like to see the difference between huge schools with like tons of kids your age, and then like just the 6 kids in your class all day long, same teachers every day. That can be a little bit like shocking when you go back to the story.
Sounds a little tedious, in fact. Yeah. Anybody else want to share? Go ahead.
My school building was like 100 years old, so going into newly built high schools was always really crazy. I always thought they looked like high schools on TV. Like I didn't think high schools were really like that. Mine was really old.
I think about that with California schools. California schools are much like a Mexican veranda kind of thing, where the doors are open to a courtyard kind of thing. I always wanted one of those. Not very efficient in South Dakota, but you know, that's the way it is. I spent, go ahead. Ooh, how was that? Lack of teachers. Very cool. Yes.
When I was in 3rd grade, I went to school on a military base, and when we had lockdowns, we would all have to hide under the desk, and they would come open and stuff and walk through and open campus kind of school.
Very cool. Very cool. I've seen the gamut. Everything from guns inside the school to, you know, because we used to be able to take our guns to school because we were hunting on the way there and the way home, right? To, you know, that was there. I've been out in the schools the last 2 weeks observing the student teachers, and I can tell you that in a single day, a single morning, I saw 2 classrooms completely evacuated, and then a team, a teaching team, come in to surround a student and remove that student from the classroom. In the same morning, in the same school, 2 different classrooms. Happened in both classrooms. Kind of fun. Kind of thought it was me causing the problem. That was new to me. It was a 1st grade classroom. 4-day schools to save money. How many of you have heard of that? It doesn't save anything. It's good though. You get a day off, but you really don't because you're there on Friday. Yeah, you are.
Question about what you saw. Was the kid dangerous?
Well, he was a 1st grader, so how dangerous is he? But you know, yeah. To the other 1st graders, absolutely, he was up punching things, kicking desks. Both of them were kind of fun. Rude. Like, I don't mean to make light of that, but I mean he's a 1st grader, right? And when a 1st grader, I mean they're basically toddlers. So when toddlers get like antsy around me, it's just like, you know, been there, done that kind of thing. I mean, they threw both of them threw a trash can. It's kind of odd that they were both there. Absolutely. Yeah. So here's the thing about that. Everything that you're noticing are things that have actively processed in your head. You've taken them into consideration. They're not things that just went by the wayside. A lot of you will walk into schools and you're going to forget a good portion of what you saw that day because it was unremarkable. It just didn't have anything that made it stick. And that stick can be anything from You know, the kid who swore at the teacher, I remember what we were talking about right before that happened. To a kid getting kicked out, they can remember the circumstances surrounding that. To, I have to get this stuff done because this is occurring. All of those things are remarkable in your mind, all right? Got something to write with? And something to write on. Or you can use your notepad, your iPad. All of those things work, right? All right. We talk an awful lot in pedagogical circles about scaffolding. Scaffolding is a cognitive process. It is the ability to build upon one thing to another thing, and our brain is capable of doing that only if we build. I cannot give you, I'll use our real analysis students in here. Real analysis, I understand, is one of the toughest math courses on campus. If it's not, then stop complaining, but I think it is. I've heard it from multiple people. If I were to put a real analysis problem up there, and I told you to solve it, and you are like me, and why are letters and numbers mixed, right? I would struggle with it. I would not be in that zone. You couldn't explain it to me in that moment. It couldn't happen. I would have to have been scaffolded to get there, right? I'm going to give you a list of some topics. And what I want you to do is I want you to write 2 things for each topic that are examples of those topics. 2. And it's okay if you don't know 2 things, right? Two things for each. Two things for each. As well. All right, another 30 seconds here. You could turn on my camera. All right, so most of you probably didn't struggle with a lot of those. Relatives, probably right there on the tip of your tongue. Cartoon characters is going to be ingrained in your memory if you watch cartoons. going about life, right? Holidays, bodies of water. Most of those were pretty simple right there. How many of you know your own phone number? This used to be a much better example, trust me. I know every phone number I've ever had since I was little. They're there because they're chunked, right? 770-7419. You can chunk those. Those are things that are no longer right there on the tip of my tongue. I don't have to keep repeating them. I don't have to keep wondering. I don't have to keep repeating it to myself in order to remember it. All of the things that you wrote down up there are things that you have already ingrained in your mind. Somewhere in your lifetime, you've had exposure to it, or you have had something remarkable happen in regards to it, that they are there. Now I want you to take that same list. And now I want you to write down one thing for each. But everything you write down has to start with the letter Q. Yep. No. Oh. And most of you aren't looking around. You're actively involved in trying to think of Q things that are up there. We've got some people who are on their phones Googling the answer. We've got some who are looking over their shoulder to the person next to them trying to figure out what the right answer is. All of those things are happening. So, what I have done to you is I have taken you from the very basic, already know information, and I've put you into a space that makes it darn near impossible for you to succeed. I don't know any bodies of water that start with Q. I'm an English major. I read, 5 books a week. Still today, I can't come up with an author that starts with Q. I've taken you from something that's too easy into something that is incredibly impossible to do without cheating. Many of you, if you had this as a homework assignment, are going to do just that. You're going to go Google it, or you're going to wait for somebody else to find the answer, and you're going to steal it from them. What we're looking for in scaffolding is not that extreme. We don't want to give them all this easy stuff they already know to the impossibility that they can't do it, all right? That's that zone of proximal development that we're going to work with it. We want them somewhere that's outside of too easy, and we want them to struggle a little bit. So let's back this down a little bit. Now give me one thing for each that starts with an S. Wow. We still have a few people who are like struggling to find the answer, but now most of you are struggling in a means that's a little more productive. You're actually getting some of those answers. Some of you, if you look at your list, you're like, I'm not really certain that this is like a body of water, but I know it's the name of something that is in this country, and I'm pretty certain on the map it starts with an S. That's these people up here, right? Some of you are like rock stars, and that's like them up there, and some of you are like, Schneider, you've lost your mind, and that's you guys back there, right? That group that was back there. But now, we put you in a place that now has you thinking a little bit. We have you actively processing all of those things that have been going on in your mind. That's where you want your students to be, all right? All right, we're going to get back to this, I promise, all right? Don't say answers out loud. Some of you may have seen this, don't share. Just on your sheet of paper, write which direction the bus is traveling. To the right or to the left? All right, everybody have their answer? All right, stand up if it's going to the right. Stand up. That's okay, it's okay. Awesome. Nice. Stand up if it's going to the left. They're like, I don't know. All right, thank you. Those of you who didn't have an answer, again, that's that group back there. They didn't have an answer. They're looking at it, they're like, I don't get it. I don't have any idea what's going on. Those of you who think it's going to the right, you're adamant about it. Those of you who think it's going to the left, you're adamant about it. Is there a right answer? Ah. Ready? 90% of the students say that the bus is traveling to the left. And my thingy isn't showing up there for some reason. 90% say it's traveling to the left because the door isn't seen. There. Yes. Now, what if you've never seen a bus? Then what? What if you've never seen a bus? And I know a lot of you are sitting there thinking, never seen a bus. A lot of you are like, spent far too much time on a bus, right? But that student who has never seen the bus, maybe that student who doesn't turn anything in because they don't have an answer. They have no prior knowledge to come from. Those of you who said it was going to the right, what was your thought? Anybody want to share? What was your thought? Go ahead.
My brain immediately went, well, we see from left to right. Oh, must be going to right, which is very correlated.
Actually, it makes a lot of sense. That's her bringing her prior knowledge, right? She's bringing something that she knows, and she's trying to make sense of what's already out there. That's cognitive psychology. Go ahead.
At first, I thought it was right because I couldn't see drivers.
Oh, awesome.
And then I realized I couldn't see doors.
Nice. Those of you who chose left, why did you choose left? Took a guess? How many guess? How many are like left, right, 50-50 shot here, right? I'm there, right? Here's where that counseling comes in, and here's where the psychology of education comes into this. That student is going to be building upon the information that they know. You built upon information that may or may not be accurate, right? Buses aren't like reading, but you tied it to something she already understood. It goes from this direction to the next direction. Some of you may have been like these. I think they were fourth graders that did this. Which don't feel bad. Fourth graders are much better visually at this kind of stuff than adults ever will be. Like tangrams, you give that to like a 4-year-old, they'll beat your butt every day. Here's the thing with this, their mind is more open at that age. So they have that, but again, those students took that prior knowledge. They didn't see a door. So if they didn't see a door, then it has to be going that way. All right. This is literally what is happening in your students' heads. You have short-term memory. That is what most class periods leave a student with, is their short-term memory. Now, that working memory is the short-term memory. That's that middle space. Sensory is that emotion that your student feels during class. Some of you got an envelope today, and you were really excited you got an envelope. Not because you got an envelope, but because the hope that something's in the envelope. It's like Christmas. Christmas morning, kind of a letdown. It's done. No longer do I get to wonder what's in the boxes. I know. It sucks. That sensory memory is what you are doing as an educator in the classroom. It's the hook that you are doing with your students. It is the idea behind the information that you want them to get to. It is the active memory processes that are hooking them with their sensation. You have to hook your students with something that gets to their very soul, with their heart. The great video that I'm going to either send you or show you here in a few minutes from Robin Williams, he does it at the end of that. He knocks it back for him. He said, it doesn't matter what this poem says, you're all going to die. He hooked them with something that got them thinking. Now, I don't all suggest that you go out to your classrooms and tell all those students that they're going to die. But the point is there, is that you get the student intrigued. You get the student's desires going. You get the student's motivation going. That's the sensory memory. That's that feeling. I see my first boyfriend in high school used to wear a cologne that if I still smell today, it takes me right back there. When I walk into my mom's house, it always smells like fresh baked bread. So when I go to Hy-Vee, I always go through the bakery because I get to see my mom, and she's still alive. But that's where it takes me. That sensory memory, that hook that you have with your students, that feeling that you can instill in them. But it's not enough. That sensory memory for a lot of them will take that knowledge and only leave them with the big picture. The working memory. If I told you all to remember something right now, and then I asked you 17 minutes later what I said, some of you aren't going to remember because a lot would have been said between those 17 minutes. Some of you, because you know it's important, you're going to go over and 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 over in your head. When you get a number or you have to remember something, you repeat it to yourself. That's what our students do. That's that short-term memory. That's the working memory. Again, that's not good enough. That's just remembering. That's just trivia. We want them to get to that long-term memory where they not only can retrieve it, but they can use it. That's where we want them to get to. We want them to be able to scaffold to get there. You all did very easy work. All of those things that you put down on this list, they are all in your long-term memory. You didn't have to really think about it. They're there. Those are the things that we want our students walking out the door knowing how to do. Sensory memory, perception. Both of those go hand in hand. Ever have a teacher who did nothing but act grumpy? Yeah. We all have our moments, right? It was just that teacher that you knew just by the tone of their voice it was not going to be a good day. If I talked out of turn, I was going to get detention. If you looked at me, I was going to get detention, right? I had one of those in high school. If you called him by his first name before you walked across that graduation stage, he was going to, a different time period, he'd take you by the neck and he'd put you up against the locker. Oh, don't be freaked out. He was loving. You know, that was him. That was his thing. He was gruff. My perception of him when I was little was, my perception of him in high school was not so mean. My perception of him as an adult, 30 years removed from high school, is, you know, he was one of the best teachers I ever had. Perception changes. Sometimes when you walk into a classroom and you're really, really cold, and then you sit there for a little while and then you're really, really hot, and then you sit there for a little while and you're okay, and then you sit there again and you're cold. Those are those perceptions, and it changes just as quickly for our students. Our students' sensory memories and their perception are all very different depending upon the minute that you are in the classroom. And if their long-term retrieval of any information you give them is tied to sensory memory and perception, you as educators start behind the gate right away. This is oftentimes where rookie teachers get the idea that I have to be nice to my students so that they learn from me. There's something to that. Relationships matter. You don't necessarily have to be nice even when they're being stinkers, in order for their perception of you to be there. They have to care about what you're saying. They have to perceive that the information you are giving them is important to them. That's the key to this. If they don't care about what you're feeding them, they're not going to eat it. And if they don't eat it here, it never gets to that long-term memory. It stops cold right here. Okay? So, what do you see? That just somebody next to you, just show each other, just tell each other what you see. This is old. This is really, really old. So, these kinds of exercises are oftentimes thought of in psychological worlds, especially in psych, as being an indicator of where your mind is at any given time. It's much more a visual exercise than it is a barometer of where your optimism or pessimism is. But there is something to be said about this being a sensory memory perceptive exercise. If you first look at this, how many of you, just raise your hands, how many of you see the beautiful woman that's in there? How many of you see the grumpy old hag? And I can tell you that on any given day, if I look at this, I know they're both in there. I can see them both. I can force myself to see them both. But if I look at this on any given day, I'm going to see one over the other. And a lot of that has to do with the fact that it's a black and white photo. So those differences are there for your visual acuity. But it oftentimes has to do with my own mindset. Where is my mind today? Where is my perception today? Where is my sensory idea today? That's key. What are your students seeing? Are they seeing the beautiful woman first, which everybody automatically assumes is the nice side? I don't get that. Or the grumpy old woman with the big chin and nose, and that's the grumpy side, which I don't agree with either, right? But that's the perception of your students. So for example, the group that was back there that didn't do their homework. And I say, how come you didn't do your homework today? How many of those students back there will automatically perceive me to be the biggest grump in the world? Even if I say it, you know, so what's up? How come you do your homework? Sometimes I'll go home to mom and dad's like, Mrs. Schneider yelled at me. Right? It's all about the perception of the students. It's all about what their mind is doing. Those of you who've taken human relations, you know, those of you who have anatomy, or not anatomy, but anatomy will work too, adolescent psych, any of those kinds of courses, you all know their brain isn't fully formed. That frontal lobe, it isn't there. They can't always perceive what it is that you are throwing at them accurately. All right, what do you see? Again, just talk to somebody next to you. Again, our mind is completing this. I'm hearing some of the words. Who wants to tell me what they're seeing up there? Ding, wrong. Thanks for playing. Anybody else want to guess? Go ahead. A swing set and a tree. I did not expect that. Oh. Interesting. Does anybody see anything else?
camera did, making sense of what is up there. Now here's the kicker to this. If you look at the next one, oh, don't do this yet. If you look at this one right here, what's there? Yeah, not so much. Okay, now, ready? When you put them together, here's the thing with that. It's not an A, it's not a B, and it's not a C. And where everybody's like, of course it's 12, 13, and 14. No, not so much. It's 1, 2, 1, 3, 1, 4. But our brains take the information we're giving it, and it's making sense of what we see up there. That's what your students do. They take the information that you give them, and they make sense of it. Vygotsky. Anybody ever heard that name? Yeah, raise your hand because you've all heard it at least once now. Vygotsky. He's the one who developed this theory. It's called constructivism. And this constructivist idea literally means you're going to take what you know, apply it to what you are looking at or enveloping yourself in, and you're going to make sense of it. That is constructivist thinking, right? All right, here we go. One more activity for you. Sheet of paper, go ahead. Draw me a picture, please, of Anne approaching a bank. Anne approaching a bank. Da, da, da. Da, da, da. All right, share your wonderful art that's over next to you. You have it already. Nobody's going to give this to you as homework, right? But again, it's metaphorical for what we're talking about here. So I gave this to you all as homework. And right now I can tell you that I only have one student in this class who listened to me yesterday during class. Because they're the only student that I've seen so far who gets to go up in that corner because they got exactly what I talked about yesterday.
How many of you drew a bank of money of some sort? Raise your hands. Yeah.
Yeah.
No. No. It is. It's a bank of water. Did anybody else do a bank of water? Yay, we have 2, 3 of you, 4 of you. Yay, thank you for listening. Yay. Now, here's the thing with that, right? You all know that a bank of water exists. You all know she did a piggy bank, like a little pig, right, with a hole in the back. There are a ton of different ways that that word can be used. And all of you did exactly what your brains are taught to do, which is good. It made sense of what's up there in order to put down something that you think is the right answer. Now, a lot of times, teachers, God bless us, right, are going to yell at you because you should have known what I was thinking. And then, here's the kicker to that. To correct that mistake, because anytime I have 95% of a class not getting the answer, oftentimes we'll modify that. So then the next time I will say, "and approaching a riverbed." But as it is, our students are going to make sense of what they know. That is constructivism. That's Vygotsky. That is scaffolding. That is cognitive psychology. That's the education behind it. So oftentimes, when our students, God bless the students back there that didn't have any information done for the next morning, they're stuck there. They're actually probably sometimes thinking at an even higher level because they don't know where to go. These guys up here, the ones who had gibberish but could make sense of it, they were thinking about it. Those guys up there, that was trivia. They knew the answer. You cannot exist in a classroom without all 3 of those entities, and they are just as important to each other as they are to the material that you are teaching. If you discount those students who don't do the work as being lazy, or, God bless you, stupid, or unable to do it, or not working hard enough, then you are not taking into consideration the cognitive psychology behind that. And that's the important part about all of this. You have to take into consideration how it is that your students are going to get to where they need to be. Okay? All right, working memory. Short-term memory. Those ideas that you do over and over and over in your head in order to accomplish a task for the moment where the next day is gone because you've stopped going over and over and over and over in your head. For me, it was in Psych 101, college, freshman year. I memorized, I talked to myself for about 5.5 hours right up to that test. And then I walked away. Poof, gone. Do you know when I learned psychology? When I taught it the first year in high school. Then I learned it, because I could use it. I had kids depending on me, right? Let's practice your working memory. I'm going to show you a technique here. All right. You're going to have 15 seconds. So look at this. And memorize as many letters and their corresponding symbol as possible. 15 seconds. All right? No, you can't write them down. No, you can't take a picture, although those are all valid things to do in a classroom today, right? All right? Only can rely on your working memory. All right. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. Write it down as many as you can. Go, 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 go. Write it down. Hurry up. Let's go. Quick, quick, quick. D, 9, 12,
How high do they?
I have no idea. Wendy's. Chick-fil-A. I know, I don't like it. Lobster. Much rather have lobster. There you go. All right, done. Stop. Turn your papers in. Right? How many of you think you did pretty good on that? All right, I'll let you do your own check, right? We're going to have you grade your own material here. All right, you check your work. There you go. How many did you get right? Wow. All right, go right down. All right, ready? All right, raise your hand, and we're going to use the 69 as the barometer here. So if you got 69% or less wrong, so 0 to 69, how many of you fall in that range? How many of you failed? Raise your hand. Awesome. How many of you are in that C-D range? How about the B's? How about the A's? No A's? But I taught it so well, right? Ah, interesting. All right, turn your paper over. Or scroll down, or, you know, wipe, or do whatnot. There you go. All right, ready? Write dad, using those letters and symbols.
I just erase
Dad. You can't look, no cheating. No, you can't use your own stuff. You should know this stuff. All right, how we doing? Ready? All right, done. Turn your papers in. Ready? All right. How many of you got it right? Awesome. Oh, look at there. We increased some of our A's at this point. Right? So what I did to you is very basic to what we do in the classroom. Is I gave you something in a very logical order to memorize. Most of you failed that, but we got to move on. Snow days, testing is coming up. We got to get going. Now I've had you apply something. You don't even have a clue what the base was, right? That application can't get done because you don't have the retrieval memory. It has not been turned into your long-term memory yet. All right? Now, here's one of the things you can do in the classroom to ease this kind of stress for your students. And again, it's all about making connections. It's all about seeing things from their perception that make sense. And usually there's a big groan when I do this. I like that one. Nicely done. Literally, the only thing I've done is I've now made a connection for the students. I've now given you something that is very simple for them to recall. They're taking the A, B, C, D, E, F, G that they've got in their long-term memory, and I've given them a means to now add the next step into something that they understand, something they can draw that connection to. So if I were to do this now and ask you to give me those, go ahead, write those down. I see some of you doing exactly what your students would be doing. They'd be putting that picture up, and then they would be dissecting that picture. So if I were to give you this again and say, how many of those did you get right this time? Raise your hand. How many got an A? How many still failed? Thank you for being honest. It's the connection that your students make between that sensory memory, because we've given them a new skill,
to work for that retrieval process. They now can make a connection. They've got that going on in their head. They've got what they can see going on in their head. They can make a connection to what's going on. This is all very psychiatric, okay? Ready? Here you go. Again, don't write these down. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. Go ahead, write them down. Is that what I did? All right. Again, most of you have those going over and over and over in your short-term memory. Let's see how many you got right. How'd you do? How many of you got the first couple and the last couple, but not anything in between? That's a very common phenomenon. You remember the beginning and you remember the end, you don't remember the middle. Like most classes, right? How many of you failed this? Yes, but again, we taught it so well, and you studied it, and you had it in your short-term memory, and you worked with it, you processed with it. Eight, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. Whoops. All right, go ahead and write those down. They have their list? All right. You've probably got a few more here. Maybe not, right? The idea with this one is if you look at this list of words, there's at least connectors that you can make between them. Blink, cough, clap. Right? Lean, squeeze. If you get squeeze, you probably got sneeze, gargle. A lot of them have to do with being sick, which given more time, you might make that connection a little bit better. Again, it's the connection between the words. A lot of times, students will take the first letters of these and create the mnemonic device. All been there? All done that? Roy G. Biv, those kinds of things, right? That connection has to be made for your students. All right. I'm going to skip real quick here, right, to this one right here, and then we're going to be done with this. So this right here is that constructivist idea in a visual, in a picture. Learners construct the knowledge that makes sense to them. ABC 12, 13, 14. You make sense with what you see, A, B, C, D, E, F, G. You make sense with what you know. The new learning depends upon them knowing that old stuff. Now, do not mistake the fact that your job is to reteach every year what they should have learned prior. Don't think that. You will be seniors, teaching seniors in high school, teaching them 2 + 2. That's not the goal here. The goal is to make them connect themselves. What do they understand in their own world that they can now connect to? Social interaction facilitates learning. Every time we tell our students to stop talking to each other, we are stopping their brain from working. It's not to say that an entire class of 7th graders who are talking about the upcoming, Saturday night dance, first junior high dance, yay! That's not the kind of talk, right? But interaction between those students about the work that's going on is key. It's necessary. And the most meaningful learning takes place in real-world tasks. I hate the name, I hate the phrase, I hate that description of real-world tasks. Because here's the reality. The students' real-world usage of your material does not yet exist. It just doesn't happen. So when you give something that they may need to do today, it may not be something that they need to do in the future. So for example, if they're going to learn how to write a bulleted list, you could have them create a resume instead of just creating a bulleted list. If you wanted them to study the effects of World War II, you could create a simulation of World War II in your classroom. All of those things are things that they can do to apply. So when you think real world, please don't just think that they have to like go out and do things. Give them tasks that are relevant, but authentic. Give them authentic things to do. How many of you wrote a really big term paper in high school, usually junior, senior year, about some sort of abstract idea? Yay, wasn't that a great assignment? No, it wasn't. It was terrible. I kicked myself. Don't, Carly. I kicked myself every single time I think I've ever assigned that. Yeah, you know what? You all had to write papers in high school. You all had to write papers in college. None of you are going to be working in your jobs anytime in the future writing an 8-page research paper about Hemingway or anybody. It's just not going to happen. There are a ton of things that they could do that are real world, that are authentic, that are there, that are able to be done, that they can make that connection to. And a really simple thing that you can do is ask them. So I need you to demonstrate to me that you can research, that you can write, and you can present that. What do you think you could do to show me that that can be done? Talk with each other. Okay, what can you do? You're going to give me a demonstration of learning. We've done nothing this year in English but how to research, how to write, and how to present. I need you to show me that you can do that. I don't want you to write an 8-page research paper. What can you do to show me that that can be done? Talk with each other. What could you do? What could you do to show that can be done? What do you come up with? Any good ideas? What do you think? What can you do? What can you do to demonstrate those 3 things to me so that I'm not reading 8-page really bad papers over Christmas break? Right? What are you going to give me? There's no bad ideas. Go.
Documentary.
Oh, very cool. How are you going to do that? So are you going to film it?
Yeah.
Filming involves writing a script, and it's a documentary, so you're going to have to do research before you can do that. Are you going to have probably peer-reviewed things? Those peer-reviewed things have to be journals. It could be, right? But, you know, small school, big school, whatever. We're in South Dakota, right? You're going to write a documentary. What's it going to be about? Awesome. Define. What's your big passion in history? Ooh, cool. World War II. Do we have any World War II vets still living in town? But you could go research with them, right? Then you've got some authentic, first-hand, right? Original sources right there going into that, right? So what else are you going to do? Edit it. You're going to edit it, right? Which means you're going to have to watch it. You're going to have to modify. You're going to have to go through all that stuff, right? Documentaries are no good unless you watch them, so who's going to see this?
Class.
Oh, heavens no. No.
I know we do like the history grade.
Yeah, those are all just a bunch of other history people. Ah, there you go. Nice. Can we have a viewing? Can we do it in the gym? Can we have popcorn? Maybe even have some ice cream? Maybe the music department can even like sell stuff so that they can put on their next concert? Good. What's your date? When's it going to be due? No, that's too far.
4 weeks.
4 weeks. So 4 weeks from today. So you're going to have it all brainstormed and fleshed out in the first 2 or 3 days? Good. When are you going to have it all set in place?
Like, what do you mean, like done or like everything?
Done.
Done?
Done.
Like 3 days.
Good. Who's going to be your prior audience to the public showing so that you can make any changes that need to be done?
A small group that I'm collaborating with.
And who would they be?
I made it like their groups in the class.
No, I don't think so.
Other teachers.
No.
Parents.
Parents might be good, but you know, parents love their kids and all the work that they produce, so probably not.
Administrator.
Yeah, no.
Friends.
No.
I don't know.
Who could be his first viewers, right? Who could be his first viewers?
The film appreciation teacher.
Yeah, no. They're still within the school, right? The vets. Let's take it down to the veterans home. Let's have them watch it for the first time. Let's have them authentically say, "You're full of crap." Yeah, but I got it from Google. I don't care. I don't say it. Right? Here's the thing with this. You've now taken a very simple assignment. And by giving him a choice of doing that, he's now going to demonstrate all those things to me, and he's going to go much, much farther. He's going to do things that he didn't expect to do in the end of that. He's going to have to go out to the community, and he's going to have to talk to people. He's going to get better research than Googling any day. He's still going to Google. He's going to write, and now, here's the kicker. I'm not his bailiwick for his grade. Because I've had him for 3 years now. He knows exactly what to do to get an A. Now he's going to have to justify his grade based upon those people who view it. Because here's the thing with that, as teachers, when we do, I promise you, juniors, seniors, I probably had 48-page research papers over Christmas break to read. I can trust you. You wanted to be the first one or the last one? Because that was the most authentic feedback. Everything in the middle was like, good God, can I read this again? Right? And that's what we do as teachers. We see the same thing over and over and over and over again. Now I'm going to see something he feels passionate about. Now all of a sudden he's going to start to say, this is cool. I can do this. I really have a tie into this. I have a buy into this. Cognitively, he's made a connection to the material. He's still going to show me that he can research, that he can present, that he can write. He's also going to show me he can edit. He's going to get feedback from people he's out interviewing. He's going to show me all of that without me giving him something that he doesn't really care about. Because you know, I'm going to get another paper about who knows what. Still doing the same thing. Now, am I going to get 19 documentaries? That's not the thought here. Because, and the big push right now is personalized learning. But here's the kick to that as well. You guys are all rookies at this yet. You haven't seen a lot yet. And the very first thing that everybody thinks about is personalized learning. So if I've got 20 kids in class and all 19 of them are doing different things, that's an awful lot of work for me. Not really. I've just turned all of the work over to him. I'm now going to walk by his side. I'm going to facilitate with him. I'm going to help answer his questions, but he's driving the bus, not me. I'm not telling him to give me 20 slides on a PowerPoint that have 4 peer-reviewed journals to it and have, you know, Stevie correct it for you for any grammar. That's all stuff that I've done. Now I've made him do it all. I've given him the cognitive process to do that. It's easier. I promise you. It's easier to do that in the classroom than to grade 40 tests every day. And he's happier. He goes home, Mom, guess what I get to do? And Mom's gonna like, do I have to buy a camera? And he's gonna say no. Or yes. Right? But the other thing that he's done is he's extended beyond the parameters of his classroom. Have you ever noticed, especially when you come from small towns, the students who graduate from high school tend to grow up and go off and be the same occupations as what are in that small town? Because that's what they see. I can promise you, town of 600, there's not a documentary film, there's not a lot of documentary filmmakers, right? Not even in the history of. But now I've got it, he's there, he's curious about this. He gets to see whether or not he really wants to do it. This would be really cool. He might be on the Oscars one day. Who knows? Now we've given him something authentic to do, something he can tie into, something he's going to remember how to do. Because here's the thing, guys, the skill is not the trivia. The skill is the use of the trivia. They have to know it, they have to scaffold it, but that's not where we want them. We want them off writing documentaries, putting it together. Questions? I know a lot of you are going through your head, you're like, this makes a lot of sense. As you are out in the field and you are watching those teachers who are out in the field, you're not going to see anything but a lot of traditional. Sit and get, PowerPoint, quizzes, tests, proofs. You're going to see a lot of that. I challenge you to not get rid of that. In your head, don't get rid of it. There's a place for it. But what I want you to now start doing when you are out in the field is I want you to start thinking, how could I reshape this so that the student isn't sleeping? I was in an art class. What is today? Thursday? Yesterday. I was in an art class yesterday. I've never seen it before in my life. There were 2 students sleeping. Who sleeps in an art class? Right? That's depressing to me. That student could have cared less about what they were doing. There was no connection. They weren't making any connections at all. Their brain was not working. They were not processing what was going on. And that's where you need to get psychologically with your students. Questions? Thoughts? Good. All right. We're going to take like a 3-minute break. When you get back, get into your RTL groups, and we're going to do the jigsaw puzzle. The jigsaw puzzle. Look at where my mind is, right? The jigsaw lesson from the readings we did for this week. About 3 minutes.
All right, so everything else is going to be the jigsaw lesson, and then we're going to talk a little bit about the field placement, and we are going to talk a little bit about the jigsaw lesson. And I'm going to write that up, and we will put that into D2L for everybody.